Here's my process video on how I put a dragonfly into epoxy resin. Make sure that your dragonfly and any flowers you put in the epoxy resin are really dry. My first layer I wanted crystal clear to show off my dragonfly, so I chose SQUID-ART, as it's a 2-component, high build medium viscosity casting resin that can go up to 1.5 inches, so it's perfect for this particular project. Make sure that you read your instructions on your epoxy resin to ensure that you're measuring it properly. In this case, SQUID-ART, which used to be Gorilla Epoxy, is 100 mils of part B to 200 mils to part A, so 1 to 2. So in this case, I did a total of 300 mils to get my resin ready for this particular pour. I always use a weight scale when I want to measure my epoxy to make sure that I am measuring the proper quantities. I follow the instructions for my epoxy resin as to how long I am to stir the part A and part B together to ensure that they're going to set properly. So make sure you take the time to read those instructions and be patient as you're stirring your resin to get it ready for your project. Now I'm ready to pour into my mold. I'm using my heat gun just to pop some extra bubbles, and now I'm ready to go. So I pour according to the instructions the maximum thickness of this particular resin, and now I am ready to place my items in it. So first I'll put my layers of glass or whatever fillers that I want into the mold and make sure that they're sitting where I want them. Now it's time for more fillers, so I put some moss on top of the glass beads, and it's time to put my sunflower into the resin. Remembering everything that goes into resin has to be completely dry. You will note that I'm working upside down in this mold. Here comes the dragonfly, so in he goes. You must be gentle, and he will just float in the resin perfectly, just the way I want him to be. And you'll note that I'm putting some more dried botanicals into the resin. Of course, these are going to be sitting behind the dragonfly, so you'll see them when you pull him out of the mold in the background. So now we need to wait for this layer to dry, and it will take a few days because it is a deeper pour resin, but we want that for the clarity. Now I'm going to mix my squid craft. This is a 1-to-1 mixing ratio, making sure that you follow the instructions properly so that we ensure that our resin cures. I want a thinner pour now for the background because I've already used the deeper pour to get that clarity, and now I'm going to be mixing the pigments into this layer so that we can see the blue in the background. I find it's very important to be patient when mixing your epoxy resin. Make sure again to follow the instructions and take your time, because the time that you take now to mix it properly will ensure that your resin product comes out perfectly cured. So now I'm getting my resin ready to pour the first layer of blue in the background. I'll use a separate cup for this. So in this case, I'm going to use a glow-in-the-dark blue pigment because I want that beautiful blue in the background during the day, and at night this pigment will glow. Make sure to only use 10% of your color into your amount of your resin, otherwise your resin will not cure properly. Here I am mixing now really well the blue pigment into my resin so that I can pour it into the back of this mold, and then we'll let it sit overnight. You will note that I embedded already some fairy lights into that layer so that the blue will sit on top of the fairy lights. Here I'm going to use my heat gun to take some of the bubbles out, and then I let it sit overnight. The following day I repeated the same process and did another layer of the blue pigment to make sure my fairy lights were covered. And now that the resin has cured, it's time to take a look at the project and how well my items set in the resin. Because I was working upside down, this is the first time I'm going to see how it all looks together. My mold was not shiny on the inside, so in this case I'm going to need a top coat. For my top coat, I'm going to use SQUID-ART, follow the instructions, and then I mixed and poured it over top of the mold, and then I let that layer sit and cure.